What is up, guys, and welcome to the final episode of the Road series. In this episode, we're going to be talking about road narrows, the sign road narrows. So, like I said, we're coming to the end of the road. Kind of sad, I'm not going to lie. This was a fun series. It's been something on my mind for a long time, just doing something based off road signs. But we're coming to the end of the road. We're approaching our destination here. We are almost home. But wait, there's two ways in front of us. There's two ways. There's one that is wide, and you can see a lot of people on it. It's like that big interstate in your area. But there's another that's really narrow, with not as many people on it, that 2-lane road on the outskirts of town. So which one do you choose? That's my question for you. Which one do you choose? The common answer, and most likely your answer, is the wide one with people. No one wants to run off the road on a narrow road. Nobody wants to end up in a ditch if you're on that narrow road, 2-lane road. You want to have enough room to move comfortably. So the wide one is the best option. So what if I told you this was not about driving? Which, I mean, you guys have probably already inferred by now when you're talking to me. It's not about driving. This is the crossroads you come to when it comes to following God. There are two ways that you can take. You can take the narrow way or the wide way. And that's what Jesus says here in our verse for today, Matthew 7:13 through 14. It says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." So if you recall, we've already covered this passage before in the On the Mountaintop series. We've already talked about the golden rule. That's what episode that this fell under. We've already spoken about this verse, but we're going to dive into it right now. We're going to focus more on what Jesus says about the gates rather than the golden rule. We're going to focus on the paths and where they lead. So it's true that both paths lead you home. The difference between the two is where home is. The difference between the two is where home is. Jesus says that a gate, one of these gates, is wide and easy. He also says that it has a lot of people that go down it, and it's very populous, you could say. It has many people following, but the kicker is this: it leads to destruction. So we know the wide gate leads to destruction. So why do we continue to follow it? Well, Jesus mentioned it. He says, "And those who enter by it are many." And you've probably heard me say this tens of thousands of times by now, but as humans, we follow the crowd. We follow the crowd. If you recall from our no parking episode, you recall that many people think that they can do things or they can park where they want because other people have parked there, even if there's a no parking sign. And there's no truth to that. There's no truth to the fact that just because other people do it means that we can do it. Jesus says right here, those who enter by it are many, but it leads to destruction. We don't want to be destroyed, right? We want life. And therefore, we can't enter that wide gate. Even whenever multiple people are going down it, way more people than what are going down the narrow gate, the narrow path. We have to follow the narrow path. You see, if we follow people into the wide path or into the wide gate, we are setting ourselves up for failure. We're setting ourselves up to be disappointed and destroyed. But it's easy, right? It's easy to go down that path. It's easy to follow the crowd and just to put it aside and just say, "Oh, I'm going to go down this way." Why would we not want to take the easy route? Well, there's a reason that it's easy, and that's because it leads to destruction. What happens when a builder takes an easy route when building a house, it crumbles. It crumbles under the slightest bit of pressure that's applied to it. A windstorm maybe knocks it over. Maybe you have earthquakes in your area and it's not a very well stable house, just a small earthquake knocks it over. So, what happens when a painter takes the easy route when painting? It doesn't look good, right? It looks sloppy, it looks bulky, it doesn't look good. So just because it's easy does not mean it's better. Just because there is an easy route does not make it the best route, because we see that the easy route leads to destruction. That's following the easy path in this sense leads you to hell. Plain, clear, and simple. It leads you to an eternal separation from God, being on the path that's not what He designed. And none of us want that. None of us should want to be separated from God. Now, unfortunately, there are people who want to be separated from God and who view Him as this terrible dictator of our lives. But in the reality, He's a loving Father who cares for us. And none of us should want to be separated from God. We should want to be in communion with Him, and we should be relying on Him to show us the way, to show us the path, to allow us to see that narrow path. When we go to the wide gate, we are ignoring the call that God has put on our lives. God wants us to dwell with Him, and He wants us to be with Him. And the wide gate does not lead to Him. It does not lead us to Him. It leads us away from Him. It leads us, like I said, to hell. It leads us to an eternal separation from Him. And being away from God is not a good place to be. It's not a good place to be. That's when the weight of the world starts to come in and starts to bear on your shoulders and starts to tell you you're not good enough and tell you that you can't do this and you can't do that. But with God, it's different. If we want God to be with us, then we have to go down the gate. We have to go through the gate that He has set apart for us. We have to follow the path that He has made for us. We cannot disregard His path just because it's easy, just because we want to go down the easy way. We cannot let the easiness allow us to be destroyed. We cannot let this idea of getting there quicker destroy us. There's another thing that Jesus says, and there's another gate besides the wide one. There's another path that does not lead to death, but leads to God, that leads to life. And the narrow path is how we get to God. I do not like driving on narrow roads or driveways. It's just who I am. I'm always scared that I'm going to fall off the side into the ditch, and I really don't feel like getting my 2012 Mustang out of a ditch. I don't think I'll be able to get out anyway. So I don't like driving on narrow roads, but this is different than driving a car on a narrow road. You see, taking the narrow path and going through the narrow gate is the difference between life and death. And Jesus does not sugarcoat the difficulty of the path ahead. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He tells us that it's hard. It's hard to be a Christian. It's hard to serve and follow Him. But Caleb, why would we want to do anything that is hard? Well, shouldn't God make it easy for us to follow Him? And I see your point and I see your questions, but there are trials that we are put through in order to test our faith, to test the genuineness of our faith, in order to refine our faith and our trust in God and allow Him to see our dependence in Him. That is why the path is hard. The path is hard because He wants to gauge where we're at. He wants to gauge if we're fully trusting Him like we say we are, or we're just putting it aside because we feel like we can do it ourselves. He's testing us. And the testing of our faith is what breeds genuine faithfulness. It's a great thing, but a lot of people take that for granted. But yeah, Serving God is hard because the world hates you. Serving God is hard because the world hates God and it hates you because of it. That's why the path's hard. That is why the path is hard. The path is hard because only the true devout lovers of Christ make it through. The ones that know who he is and know his power, the ones that know he is with them through everything and anything that they go through because they have that faith, they have that trust in who he is. We have to stop looking at the minor inconveniences in our life and we have to start looking at the opportunities that God has for us. We have to stop looking at the problems in our lives as inconveniences and start looking at them as opportunities, opportunities to further our relationship with God. We have to know and believe that God will step in at a moment's notice and lead us out of the storm, will lead us down the path to Him. And that only happens when we trust in Him. This aspect alone is why there are so few people on this path, why this path is not as populous as the other one. People don't want to go through the gate. They don't want to give up their lives. They don't want their lives to be hard. They don't want to put the effort in to a relationship with God. They just want things to be easy. But what we fail to understand is that life is not easy, period. Life is hard. And the only way that we get through this life and the only way that we know who we are is through the narrow gate. And it's through knowing Christ. And that's because going through the narrow gate leads to life. Now, there are around 2.8 billion Christians in the world. It's a lot. That's a lot. Less than that who actually have a relationship with God. And that number continues to decline, unfortunately. But there are 8.3 billion people in this world. Now, 2.8 billion is a whole lot, like I said, but look at it in comparison to 8.3 billion. Just to do a little math for you, that's 31% of the total population. Maybe give or take a little bit. The path has a few walking on it. Like I said, 2.8 billion is nothing to be slouched about, but compared to the whole number, the path is few. Based on data, there's 69% of the population who is going down the path of destruction, who entered the wide gate. There are 69% of people who are living by their own ways and trusting in their own abilities. 69% of the population who is leading and going on a path to eternal death. This is why it is so important to follow the narrow path. It may be hard, it may be scary, it may look confusing at times, it may be bumpy, and it may have fewer people, and it may look less appealing, but it leads to life. It leads us to God, and there's no other place that I would encourage you to be other than the hands of God. But we have to go down the narrow path. We have to understand that it's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard path. There's not going to be a lot of people on that path, but don't let that discourage you. Go through the narrow gate because it leads to life. So to wrap this up, the path to God is not going to be easy. It's going to be filled with temptation and things that try to pull you away from God. But we have to know who leads us. We have to know that God holds us. We have to know that God is with us every step of the way. He is our path to life. And if we walk in the ways of the world, even though it has more people on it, we are walking ourselves into death. We can't let the crowd guide us to death. It's like that one thing that your mom always tells you, if your friends jump off a bridge, would you? And most of y'all's answer would be yes. Because I know y'all. And most of y'all would say yes. But just because there's more people on it does not mean that we need to walk on it. We don't need to be led to death. We are guiding ourselves to destruction if we do that. We have to stay away from the wide path. No matter how appealing it is, no matter how many people are on it, no matter what the devil tries to whisper in your ear, stay off the wide path. Stay away from it. We have to enter through the narrow gate. We have to enter to the path of life. We have to trust God. We have to rely on Him. We have to. He will guide us through the storms and He will lead us through the valleys. God is the only path to life. He is the only way. He's the only way out of our dead ends. He is our guide through the detours. He is our speed limit to make sure we do not miss what He has for us. He is our stop sign when we are filled with worry. He is the no parking sign when we want to park in places that we're not supposed to. He teaches us to yield to His will and allow Him to guide us. He is the only way to heaven and the one way to life. But all of that is only seen by taking the narrow path, by going down the narrow gate, by going through what God tells us to go through. So what are you going to do? But the ball is in your court here. You've heard me talk about this is 8 weeks. Well, 7 weeks. You heard Scott talk about it 1 week. 8 weeks of road signs that all culminate to the road narrow. What are you going to do? Are you going to enter the gate that leads to life, or the one that guarantees destruction? And that's all I'm going to leave you with. This series is meant for you to understand that there's one way to heaven, and that God has us along this road of life. This road of life is hard, but if we enter through the narrow gate, it's a path that leads to life. But thank you guys for listening and watching and supporting this series. I'm not really sure when our next episode will be. It will be the Easter episode, and then we'll probably go on a 2-week long break. But thank you guys for listening and watching, and we'll see you at Easter.